Hi guys, welcome to Cult Film and Review, the podcast where we discuss the films you love but no one else gets, and we see if they still hold up. Tonight is our 100th episode. Not only that, but we're on a mission to save the president from a maximum security prison, only known as New York. Because we're talking about Escape from New York. So let's just start the 100th show.
Your Hollywood system stole our sex and co-opted our violence, so there's nothing left for our kinds of movies.
I did not hit her. It's not true.
Klopex?
Klopex. Klopex.
Up yours, baby.
Me and Bubba, my little brother, listen to you every night.
Where in the hell are we?
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Thanks for joining us for our 100th episode. We really, really appreciate it. I'll just get this out of the... Thank you.
Starting us off right.
Why did you react? I could have edited that out. Now it's in there permanent.
How can we not react to that fucking hack?
Welcome to our 100th episode, and apparently Kyle's last. He
Two
just died.
distinct sounds.
Should I just start over?
No. Keep going. It's 100.
Thanks for joining us for our 100th episode. That's already a nightmare. I just want to say thank you very, very much for listening. 100 episodes. This is the weirdest recording I think that we've ever done, in the fact that it is our 100th episode, right? It's Easter Sunday.
Yep.
That we're recording this. And isn't it like our 2-year, like...
No, 2 years, 4 episodes away.
4 episodes away. So we're...
Well, yeah, it's a lot of things culminating.
Yeah, in like one time. It's weird. It's very weird.
Well, technically, I guess the 2 year would be a month from now, but sure.
Sure.
Still, it's pretty damn close.
Yeah.
And it proves that we are able to commit to something.
Look at that.
Yeah, first time.
You know what, guys? If you had told me that we would be doing 100 of these episodes, I would have said, yeah, probably, because we have nothing better to do.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Probably, definitely.
So we said, like, hey, you're probably going to be doing this podcast for like 100 episodes. I'm like, what else do I have going for me? Yeah, probably.
Did you have anything else to add to that, or is that it?
I just wanted to let you know, like, just go back and reminisce a little bit about where we've come and where we are going.
2 years is... That's a lot of life happens in 2 years.
That's what I was going to say. Like, one of the things that I'm most proud of is this year, especially because it has been, I think everybody's kind of gone through like almost a life-changing hardship this year that's in this room, and we still have made it here every week to do
this is the one constant, man.
So.
Well, you know, that's I think for 2 reasons. One, because we all like hanging out with each other and watching movies. And 2, because we've had a decent reception from all the people that are supporting us out there. So, you know, it's fun to do. It's, you know, podcasts are great just for a bunch of fucking dorks to sit around and talk about cool shit. And then to have people actually, you know, give you the extra time to listen, you know, to what maybe, if anything, we would have something important to say.
Am I the only one in this room who thought that Chris's speech just now was even more impactful because he's wearing a pair of like dark sunglasses?
I think it's really important,
and it's like 9 a.m.
I think it really showcases where Chris's head is now that we're at 100 episodes.
Yeah.
Now he's like, I don't even have to take off fucking sunglasses.
I'm
indoors
basically
anymore.
hooked on heroin and, you know, ready to fucking
I can't wait until
ruin everything for everyone.
I can't wait until our VH1 True Hollywood story.
For our 100th episode, I do have a couple questions for everybody here.
Ooh, fun.
And
did you introduce us yet?
No, I haven't. So
you know what? After 100 episodes, I think people know who the fuck we are, Kyle.
No, they still don't.
No, they don't.
Well, we're always gaining new people, I would assume.
True. So for the 100th time, I am joined by Kyle Smith.
Hey, how's it going?
Michael Salustio.
Hey, everybody.
And for the 99th time, Chris Willenbrecht.
Hey, what's up?
I'm so glad you picked up on that. Yes! I was about to say it too.
Am I
like,
the only
wait a
one
second.
that's ever missed an episode?
Yes, you are.
You know what?
Oh,
Now that I
okay.
think about it, get the fuck off of here. This is not your 100th episode.
This is not.
Why are you riding our coattails?
You know, it's actually
Our
more
coattails.
than... To be
Why
fair,
are you riding our coattails, bro?
Coattails.
to be fair, there is more than 100 episodes that we've recorded.
Well, we don't speak of those.
Yeah.
Those are in what we call the vault.
Yeah, those are in the vault, maybe to be released in 10 years on our 1,000th episode.
I feel like it's like Prince's vault. It'll never be open, and it never should be.
All right. So here's what I want to know, guys. And maybe this is one of them. Who knows that we're going to talk about today on our 100th episode. What is the movie that influenced your life the most? What is the movie?
In which way?
Ever or on that we've done?
Ever.
Like it impacted you?
Yeah, like your style of movies that you may like, enjoy, or something that is just like your A number one film, basically. Like, what's influenced your life the most?
I've got 3.
No, I said one.
Already. 100 episodes. He fucking thinks he could just run this
Dude, first
stuff.
it's the goddamn fucking headphones,
I don't
and
need
then
any
now it's
fucking
the
rules.
Sorry, it's the heroin.
I
It's the
got
heroin.
3. So pick one, Chris. What's your number one? While everyone else is thinking.
Pink Flamingos, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, that movie, like changed the way that because before that I was just like kind of into horror films, and I was finding some offbeat like horror films and things like that. But once I saw Pink Flamingos, I was like, wow, like this is. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say because then you see weird shit like Faces of Death when you're a kid, and you're like, what the fuck? Like, so you're always challenging yourself. But that film like made me see comedy and like offbeat weirdness and like art in a different way, like if you could call it that. It's kind of become that over time. So like, and it shocked me. Like it was something that I saw and I was like, what the fuck am I watching it, and why do I think it's hilarious? So it kind of made me realize that there's like some weird underground shit out there, even though it's not that underground anymore. And it kind of took me on this journey through like trying to find even more obscure films.
I would say mine would have to be Kira Kurosawa's Yojimbo, which Mike's probably seen it, but if you don't know, it's a samurai film from the 50s. When I saw that movie, I was probably like 11 or 12, and I'd spent pretty much all my early years up to that point just really into horror movie and stuff, and tracking down every kind of horror film I could find, and just being a casual watcher of films, like a lover of movies, but kind of a casual watcher. And when I saw that movie, it did a few things. It opened my eyes that black and white films can be amazing. Foreign films can have comedy. It's a movie that has a really wacky, weird, offbeat soundtrack. And then, like, watching the movie kind of opened up the idea. It was like, oh, well, this movie's been remade into what is, like, the very first, arguably the very first spaghetti western, which is Fistful of Dollars, starring Clint Eastwood. And that opened up an entire new world of finding spaghetti westerns and stuff. And so that movie really is like what propelled me to be like, film isn't just something I just casually enjoy. It's something that I invest my time and effort into studying and learning about and kind of enjoying on a deeper level.
Mike?
I have 3. I guess the one that I remember really turning me into like a huge like film fan, where I just wanted to absorb every film that I could get my hands on, was El Mariachi. For some reason, I remember first seeing that film and then like listening to the director's commentary over and over and over again, because it made me get a real appreciation of how films are made and what it takes to make a film and all the little details that go with that. To hear of a guy that like did it for like $3,000 and he starts like laying it out and starts talking about how he edited it and did it like that. That was really like the big thing that made me wanna. I wanted to get every film. Then I wanted to see how every film was made. I wanted to know it's like when you get into cars or something. I imagine you want to know every little part and how they all work, and you want to know about engines and carburetors and other things that I know nothing about. That's how I felt about seeing that film for the first time. Was kind of like, okay, well, how does a big budget film get done? How does that work? And then it was like the idea of, especially with cult film, that was kind of like, it had a weird cult following to some extent, because it had, I guess you would call it the indie cult following in a weird way, because it's still kind of one of those films like that, and Clerks, and all these other like really super micro low budget films that became like super popular.
It was a good time.
It was a good time in fucking film, and I feel like that's probably never going to come back, because the internet and everybody does like a YouTube video now, and but back then it was kind of like that, and Slacker and those films, like, it made people think that they could do it,
Right.
And then digital came along, and then everybody was like, "Okay, let's do it."
I feel like it made film festivals cool.
It absolutely
You know,
did.
like
Because I mean, that was like, and then it was the same year that Reservoir Dogs, and then ultimately Pulp Fiction won the Palme d'Or,
yeah.
and then that became a big thing. Like some kid from a fucking that only worked in a video shop that like never really even finished high school can
Right.
make a big film and then win the most coveted award in all of
Yeah.
film. Essentially, like that's when everybody, and Sundance was huge. Like I feel like that's not something that we see anymore, unfortunately, in film festivals.
I hope there's a resurgence, but I think that's
I
because
wish.
I think that's because a lot of major studios have sort of taken over the major film festivals. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like so you're not getting that like grassrootsy kind of like just some fucking dude who made
Yeah.
it and on his own and made it by his own name. You know what I mean? So we might have a resurgence of that, but
I don't think so. Actually, it pertains to the film that we're about to talk about. But I was on the way over here. I was thinking about something that I wanted to discuss that pertains to Escape from New York and how films like that can never be created again because of where we're at in Hollywood right now.
But before we get to that, we should find out what yours is.
Yeah.
My most influential film for me was when I was in high school and I started getting into like media productions and stuff like that. I was like loved movies, but I wasn't into movies. The movie that did do that for me though was like a lot of my friends at that time were into horror, so I started getting into horror because they were into horror, and one of the first tapes I got was The Evil Dead.
Mm-hmm.
And after watching that and being scared out of my mind, because I wasn't into horror films at that time, like at all, that made me want to make movies just like that because it was so like crazy and like never seen camera movements like that, and just the monsters were scary as hell, and like the gore was fantastic. It was just it made me go like, oh, you can make stuff like this, like
What's funny about that too is because like that film too has a connection with me too, because actually to get to El Mariachi, what ultimately led me to start following like indie films was Bruce Campbell's If Chins Could Kill book.
That's a great book.
I remember reading that book. I probably read that thing cover to cover like 5 times because it detailed exactly what you're like, how they did all those shots and how they did it on a shoestring budget and how they were using Vaseline on fucking things. Like that led me to El Mariachi, and then from there it was just like, oh, I need to ingest every little bit and piece of how films are made. Yeah, it's a great film. You're right.
The Evil Dead did that for me, and that's one of the most influential films. Like, I mean, just for me, I've ever seen. Like, it's fun, it's scary, it's funny, it's it's all of that. So, and it's what got me going into movies, basically.
Yeah.
Your answers may have given this away, but what is your favorite movie genre and why?
Who wants to
Kyle?
go first?
Kyle, you want to go first?
It's hard to put it into a genre because I'm just a big fan of like the anti-hero films, which generally kind of generally carry themes of spaghetti westerns and classic samurai swordplay films. But any movies that kind of have that kind of that classic anti-hero, the person who's kind of a scumbag, but oh well, I got to take care of it. I got to deal with this type of thing. That's like always been the kind of movies I've gravitated towards the most.
Chris?
Definitely horror films. Horror films are my favorite genre, which is interesting that I would pick Pink Flamingos as like the most influential cult film because it's a comedy. But like, if I had to pick another, it would be Halloween. Like that movie definitely like. Seeing that as a young kid made me kind of obsessed with horror films. And there's so many out there, like I can admit to have not seen them all, as we've discovered on this show. But like that is the one genre that I could watch every single day and do, actually, and never get tired of it. So,
Mike?
I mean, I guess it's weird to say it on a cult film podcast because I mean that's what we do. But like my favorite genre of film is actually I guess you would call it a dramedy.
Yeah,
I love black comedy, dark comedies.
Kind of, but more like the psychological. Like I like a good Mike Birbiglia film, or like an Andy Kaufman would be another. Like anything Andy Kaufman does, I always like because it's always like heavy-handed drama with like like just a little bit of comedy. Like one of my favorite films of all times is Lost in Translation.
Oh, I
because
love it,
the
yeah.
absolute perfect mixture of
I love that movie.
a
Yeah.
beautiful drama, a beautiful like semi-love story, but there's all these there's a humor to it. It doesn't take itself so seriously all the time.
Mm-hmm.
When a film does that as perfectly as I feel like that film does it, like those are the films I can go back to over and over again, and I have I'll do it. I love it too because nowadays like stand-up comedians have made a real big attempt to get into that. Like Louis C.K. has made a real big attempt to.
Dave Chappelle's kind of doing that too.
Like a big kind of like there's a big movement now I feel from a lot of comedians that they want to do these kind of like indie dramas, but they all have this little layer of their comedy like injected into them. And I mean, yeah, so the opposite of a cult film in a weird way.
Cody?
I would say mine is probably sci-fi. Because with scifi's so broad because you can get everything in it. You can get comedy, you can get horror, you can get drama. Like you really can. Like then, and I just love the idea of either like the future or space. Like the settings are what really gets me.
Industry.
The communications industry, the jungle. You know,
Talking gorilla.
the Lost City of Zinj. There's a lot of things that just draw me to that genre. I love it. I mean, it's always an adventure too. Like no matter if it is a drama or comedy or whatever. So there's always some sort of adventure with it. So
I like sci-fi too. One of the reasons I love sci-fi and like fantasy films too is because you can actually tackle some serious subjects in a world that has no rules. You like get to create the rules. I love that about those. Like sword and sorcery films, I like that you can kind of like, okay, we can tackle issues, like serious issues, but we can do it in such a way that, I mean, if we want a bad guy, let's make it a fucking dragon. Who gives a shit? Like sci-fi, same thing.
Yep.
You can make up the rules in sci-fi as you go along.
yeah,
You'd be like, okay, temporal displacement. I don't know. They end up in a world where, women are only existing, and what do men do? Like, you could do all these weird things with those
you
genres.
can have a planet of apes.
You can have a whole planet of apes.
Like there it is. There's really
it definitely
so much.
pushes the imagination a lot more than some of the other genres
Yeah,
do.
and that's why I love it. It's one of my favorites. All right, so I have another question for you. This one's kind of a broad question, but we've done 100 episodes, right? Where we started out and what we thought we knew about film to now is probably changed, right? Is there a movie that that maybe someone else picked that has either like stuck with you or kind of changed how you view movies, or a movie that you may even have like not rated well at first, but like over time it's kind of never left you, so you can't get away from it, so you probably would like it better? Maybe Repo Man. Kyle.
No.
Something like that. Mike, do you have one?
Yeah, I have one. Without a doubt, it's The Holy Mountain for me. I mean, and even though I rated that film, I think a 4.
Yeah.
I don't think I would change it because I still feel like the reason I think I brought it down 1 star was because I saw a lot of what I thought was his ego in the film a little bit. But I remember that was my first. Well, it wasn't my first introduction to a Jodorowsky film, but it was a reminder kind of it, of how good of a filmmaker he is. And after seeing that film, I just wanted to like ingest every single thing that I could find from his library. Like I went kind of nuts and started doing, entire like reading biographies about him, and I wanted to know everything about how he came to make the types of films that he does. I mean, I've always been into surrealist films like David Lynch, but it was a moment where thank you, Chris, for bringing that film to the show, because it kind of let me see where a lot of the influence of some of my other favorite filmmakers came from and how much he influenced that kind of genre.
Yeah.
I just fucking like, yeah.
That movie,
that's the genre, and that's the filmmaker that I feel like, thanks to this show, I might never have kind of went to re-explore and then see it in a totally different light, which makes him now probably one of my favorite filmmakers of all time now.
Yeah, that was a very influential movie for me as well. Like, definitely a game changer. But I'll take the next one since we're kind of going there. Riccio. That was a movie that definitely I had never seen, would have never picked up, would have never chosen for myself. Not a big fan of like martial arts or like, Asian cinema or, even horror. I'm not a huge fan of that. But that film like definitely made me realize that it can be a lot of fun. Yeah. So that movie definitely changed and opened up that genre of film for me.
That movie impressed me because I picked that knowing you hate that style of filmmaking, and I just wanted to kind of test you and see.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, anytime I pick any films that are like a little out there, usually to see if I can get you to hate something or like something, which is the goal. And I'm glad you did like it because that's a badass movie.
Yeah.
It's bloody as fuck.
I love that's a huge draw for me, and then it just how silly it was. I mean, it's like, dramatic but silly, and like the whole manga aspect, which I didn't really know much about that until, kind of seeing it visualized in a film. I know it stems from like a style of comic, right? Essentially.
Yeah.
It's a manga, yeah.
Yeah.
A graphic novel.
Yeah.
I would say for me, I'll go next. We'll leave Kyle for last on this one. I would say for me, there's two. Frankenhooker just for some reason has never left my mind. I have grown such a love for that film. It's crazy. I don't know why. I mean, I rated it high from what I remember. I don't remember what I rated it, but I remember rating it pretty high. But yeah, it's one of those ones where I am like now a cult fan of that film. Like I consider myself like I love that movie and I like want to watch it all the time. The other one that I would kind of go back and say that I think I said it in the episode, I didn't get it at the time and it has really grown and stuck with me is Buffalo 66. Hearing people quote the lines and like I quoted it the other day because someone asked me if I knew how to drive a stick, and I was like,
Shifter
yeah,
car.
I was like, you mean a shifter car? And like went through the whole spiel of how I drive luxury cars that shift themselves. So like I don't know, that film is just stuck. It's weird because I didn't think Buffalo 66 would be the film that like I just can't get away from, but it is. It's one of those movies that I just can't get away from. Kyle?
This is an interesting question. I've been scrolling through all of these past movies that we've done before, and there's one that I actually rated it 5 at the time. I didn't realize how much it would stick with me and how much I would like it going into it. And that's Gummo.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I
Same here.
I had preconceived notions about what the film would be. And when we reviewed it, I had seen it in the past, but not all the way through. I just remember bits and pieces of it, but I thought it was just for a disgusting movie and such a beautiful picture. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah, no, definitely.
it had a very impactful visuals and story, and even though it was kind of disjointed in some places, it felt completely correct for the mood and tone of the film. And I don't know, the movie, it's one of those movies that just totally caught me off guard because you watch it and it's over and you're like, what the hell I just watched? And then you sit on it for a day and you start playing through all the scenes in your head, and then it just keeps going. You just keep doing it over and over again, and then all of a sudden you catch yourself a month and a half later, you're still like thinking back on Gummo of all movies.
That was me in Buffalo 66, so I get exactly what you're saying.
I can agree with. I completely understand where you're coming from, Kyle. That's exactly how I came into Gummo. Because the only thing I'd ever seen from Harmony Korine was friggin' Spring Breakers, and
yeah.
I fucking hated that film.
Same here.
And it irritated me how much like hipster film fans were kind of like, it's so fucking great, it's great, right? Like, and I was just like, if they're all like this, like, go fuck yourself. Like, I remember being really angry about it and never going to see Gummo because of that, because I just assumed based on that film that all of his films were like that.
Yeah.
And then I was glad to be
surprised
yeah,
that it was
surprised that
actually
like,
authentic.
not- it was very authentic, where that one is so glossed over. And so I guess that was his goal, but,
Right.
I still didn't like the way he did it.
Yeah.
All right, guys, thanks for joining us for our 100th episode. When we come back, we're actually going to talk about Escape from New York. So let's take a break, and we'll be right back. Okay, so we're finally going to talk about Escape from New York. Now, if you don't know, it was directed by JC, John Carpenter. Came out in 1981, had a budget of $6 million, made $25 million, was filmed here in the U.S., and has a current rating of 85% on Rotten Tomatoes. If you don't know what it's about, in 1997, when the U.S. president crashes into Manhattan, a giant maximum security prison, a convicted? Why did I say-
Convict.
I know. Why did I say that wrong? Convicted bank robber is sent in to rescue him.
And ex-special forces operative.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got all of these.
An X2-eyed human being.
Yeah, he used to have 2. Now he's got 1.
Well, we don't know that. Maybe we don't. Maybe he was born with one
Maybe
eye.
he has 2, and he wears the patch to be mysterious.
Yeah. Maybe he's just like, you know what? I don't like what the world looks like with 2 eyes.
I would ask the question if anyone has not seen this movie before, but I bet they do. So we'll skip over that.
Okay.
I'd seen it, but it's been a long time. I didn't remember much about it, to be honest.
Okay, we'll come back to that. What's that? I was going somewhere.
Important statements by Chris Willenbright.
I mean, I thought if I was going to get it in anywhere, it was going to be there.
This is Kyle's pick. Kyle, why'd you pick this film?
It's I figured 100 episode. It's time to go back to John Carpenter, and I feel like I say this every time I pick a John Carpenter film, but I think this actually might be my favorite. The movie itself has like permeated itself into various aspects of my life. Like one of my online handles is Pliskin. Like I'm just like, this movie has just affected me in a broader way than any other movie has, and then the fact that this movie has like punched itself into, like, this character has punched itself into other forms of pop culture and video games and stuff, because obviously that's who's this character is, and like the Metal Gear Solid franchise is totally based off of this character. So I love this movie. I just think it's a really fun action movie, and I thought it'd be a great pick for number 100.
All right, so we've obviously all seen this film before, Chris, and maybe you haven't seen it in a long time, Chris, and maybe you're going back and revisiting this for the first time in a very long time. What were there any preconceived notions going into this? Do you remember liking it the first time?
I remember thinking it was okay the first time, and I was probably not as experienced of a movie watcher at that time.
Yeah.
And then, so going into it, I was like super excited to jump back into it because I wanted to digest it and hopefully differently than I did originally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you got that opportunity this time around.
I sure did.
Yeah.
I just hit play and it happened to me.
No, I remember, I don't remember where the first time I saw this film was. I honestly don't. I feel like I saw Escape from LA first, which is just terrible.
You know what? Maybe that helped you enjoy this one. Appreciate it a little bit more.
Yeah, because I feel like I saw Escape from LA on like Sci-Fi Channel first.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
I definitely saw Escape from LA after this because I remember thinking, "Oh, is this like, what is this? Is this a sequel or And then I remember watching it and being like, "What is this? What did I How is this related to the previous film?"
I think we have to be thankful that Escape from LA happened because I think as a 90s kid, most of us like saw that character Snake Plissken because that movie came out, and then we're like, oh, there's Escape from New York, which came before it. Like that's kind of how I like was introduced. I was like, oh, this big movie, with Kurt Russell. It was in theaters and everything, and then it's like, oh, there was something that happened before this, so introduced it.
Yeah, definitely. That's basically the same experience that I had with it. Let me ask you guys this too. This was a pretty big hit. So what do you think makes this a cult film besides John Carpenter?
I think it's the character of Snake Plissken. I think it definitely has a lot to do with the fact that a remake did happen in the 90s, and because of VHS, and people were able to kind of people maybe from the younger generation were able to like explore and discover this movie. And like I said too about like how this character and references to this film have really made their way into all aspects of pop culture. It's not just like this is a movie and then people like it and moves on. It's like the character makes its way into other films or other into like different mediums within like video games and comic books and stuff like that. So I think it has almost everything to do with Snake Plissken. Like the coolest anti-hero. He's like the best anti-hero there is.
Certainly an iconic character.
You know what I think does this film a lot of justice too? there was a theme that was going on, I feel like, in the 70s and throughout the 80s. Every film took place in New York, and it framed it as a piece of shit place to be. And this one was just like, and it's going to get fucking worse. Like, I feel like this film really did that. Like, if you think about it, like, I remember, like, even as a kid, like, seeing it in, like, movies like Crocodile Dundee, where, like, this innocent Aussie comes to New York and immediately gets fucking, like held up. And then he pulls out a bigger knife and then he runs away. Like, I feel like every movie had to deal with it. You can't even do that in movies anymore because New York is, like, this totally decent, cool place to live.
Uh-huh.
You know? Like, Times Square is not this seedy place. But, like, going back to what you were talking about, Henenlotter films and stuff like that, same thing. I mean, but some of those, did those come before this? 1981.
This is 81.
I'm trying to think what was the first real film to do. I mean, that had to have existed before.
I'm sure there's several
Taxi Driver?
films with it. Yes,
Yeah,
Taxi Driver's a big
totally
one.
right. So I mean, I feel like that was a theme, and everybody kept trying to revisit it because as a kid, I just remember seeing so many fucking like action films and horror films. They all dealt with people going to New York. And shit happening.
Mm-hmm.
Bad shit was gonna go down.
Mm-hmm.
And this film like kind of like just says like, you know, it's gonna be worse in 97.
It's gonna be an actual prison.
Man, was he wrong?
No, because in 97, L.A. was the prison.
Yeah, that's true. When did LA come out?
97.
So he, in a weird way, he came back and did it.
He filmed it, or he released it in the year that this
takes place.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he said this is just as bad. Apparently.
Yeah.
I got the location wrong.
Yeah.
But it was shot in 97. Where does it go to in the future, or does it?
I don't remember.
Okay.
Wait, what do you mean?
An Escape from L.A. Is it present day, or is it like 1997?
I can't remember how that starts, doesn't it? I feel like it starts with him with immediately. Isn't it like right after the events of New York?
No, they're unconnected films.
They're completely unconnected?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought they were like somehow weirdly like, yeah, I remember when you survived in, I thought you died in New York kind of thing.
Oh, as far as I'm aware, I thought they were.
I'd have to reluctantly revisit that film.
So I kind of agree with Kyle in a sense that what makes this a cult film, but I also have a little bit of a different take of it. I don't know if it's so much the idea of Snake or the character of Snake Plissken or the idea of Snake Plissken that is what makes this a cult film. Like one of the things that I don't think you can do anymore that 80s films and earlier films that could do is you could create your own hero. You don't really see that in films anymore, right? Everything's kind of based off of things that are already established, like superhero films. They're already established characters. No one's coming out with a new hero.
Except John Wick.
Except John Wick, exactly. Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like that is kind of like there's no new John McClane's being made. There's no new like heroes, I feel like. And that's kind of a dead thing because everything's based off of like either a nostalgic thing now in Hollywood, which is a big thing, bankable things that they know are going to sell,
right.
Where I think it was really cool in 1981 to go, here's $6 million and you're inventing your own hero, essentially, your own superhero. And here's the movie, make it, which is, I also was just baffled by like, I feel like we also are dead in the water as far as like filmmakers go, because this kind of angers me too, where back in the day, you give John Carpenter $6 million, he makes Escape from New York. Now you give someone $6 million to make fucking Sharknado.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? It's, I don't know where.
I mean, $6 million was different than it is now, like as far as spending goes.
But you can get a lot more out of $6 million.
What do you think
now.
would be the equivalent to that? Like a
12?
15, 12?
Yeah, maybe 12.
Yeah. But what filmmakers do we know that are doing, to Cody's point, like I'm trying to think, like
$12 million action film.
Yeah, who's doing like a $12 million action film and that also like kind of like spawns like a whole.
Well,
there's not a lot of John Carpenter people.
Turns out they're not, but the market is wanting those. So filmmakers need to get on making action films because we think about it. We don't have any like, I don't mean to compare the two, but we don't have any Jean-Claude Van Damme's or Chuck Norris's or any of this stuff.
Yeah,
like
Dwayne the Johnson.
That's not
maybe.
to say it's not the same. Like
but he ain't gonna.
We don't have Steven Seagal's like really like not in like the world that they were in like the 80s and 90s, So I mean, I think it's kind of a missing genre.
Yeah, it's it's weird because we don't have like Snake Plissken is an iconic character because I mean it spawned all these other worlds and it's an original character.
Mm-hmm.
And and if you go off of this movie, you don't get that much background on Snake Plissken.
No,
Like,
no.
really?
I mean aside for like a deleted scene, I mean you don't really know that because the movie was supposed to open with his botched bank robbery where he gets nabbed, and I think the reason John Carpenter cut it out because he didn't want to open the movie with Snake failing at something like showing that.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I kind of like that decision.
Me too.
Yeah.
And for another reason, though, because one of the things I love about this film is the fact that they frame his entire backstory with just one phrase, which is, "I thought you were dead."
Yeah.
Which is
And-
great.
And they never explain it, why they thought he was dead or where they thought he died or anything.
Yeah,
It
well-
just gives you the impression that, okay, so this dude's been on, like, has a storied history
Well, yeah,
of
and-
getting into shit and no one knows where he goes.
And it's really it's really interesting too because it's like all these people know of him and it's like it just
Yeah.
leaves you wondering like do they know of him because of like his work as part of like the special forces unit and like that or because of like his is he like this like huge series of fucking crimes and robberies that made him like super famous? He's like kind of this like this hero, you know what I mean? This hero-esque character. It's
Like the
you don't-
Robin Hood.
Yeah, Robin Hood guy. You just don't know enough, and that's what makes it so cool. And that's why I agree. I think it's an amazing decision to remove that deleted scene and just have him walk in being this mysterious character that everybody knows.
I mean,
Right.
Kurt Russell could probably make an entire career off of playing old characters that he played in John Carpenter films that have backstories, because that's like exactly like in Big Trouble in Little China.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like you get the impression that Wang and him are like have been on adventures before and they've been hanging out. I like that. I like that about films. It's like everything that everybody bitches about for superhero films, like, oh, we got to go through the origin story, we got to go through all this bullshit. Like John Carpenter created new characters and was just like, fuck an origin story. Let's just go right into it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's Snake Plissken. He's a badass. He's got a
yeah,
fucking
he
thing
captures that
Yeah.
moment of time in their life.
Yeah.
Of like whatever the adventure is, and gives you enough to be satisfied, but leaves you asking questions. too.
With most John Carpenter films, less is more.
Mhm.
Like it it always is. Like they just give you little pieces of dialogue for your imagination to go wild and create whatever happened before.
Yeah, and that's like that. I feel like that's an aspect that's just lost on a lot of filmmakers in general. Is like you don't need to show and say everything. Like for the love of fucking Christ, like. As a fan of watching movies, the best part about watching a movie is being able to use your imagination and help propel the story along further. I don't want to be spoon-fed this story that you thought was cool and came up with. Like I wish more directors would just be like, you know what, fuck it. You don't need to know everything about this character. You don't need to see everything about this thing. Just use your imagination and make my film better. Like that's how I wish filmmakers would approach it. And John Carpenter nailed it on all of his movies.
Right, because you get the with this, especially with this movie, what you open up with basically finding out that in 1980, what is the crime rate
5,
rise?
I think they were.
Yeah, raises
4. 1984. is what-
1984, the crime rate rose 400%.
Right.
I love Jamie Lee Curtis coming in on that one too.
Dude,
Not the first time she's done it.
I know.
Yeah.
She's like a big.
What was the other film that we did that she was the voice on like
It was a phone call in
Halloween 3?
Oh yeah, was it Halloween 3?
I think it was Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. Isn't she's a operator that they
yeah.
they call?
yeah, she's at the radio station at the end or whatever.
Uh-huh.
So we realized that, and then in 1997 we realized that they build a wall around Manhattan, and they make the Mexicans pay for it. But they build a wall around Manhattan,
Horrible.
and they basically turn it into a prison, and that's where they put all the worst criminals. You have the option before you go to this prison to basically die.
Yep.
Kill yourself and get cremated if you want. Just let the guards know.
Mm-hmm.
That's how bad of a place it is. They give you that sense right off the bat. They don't. I like that they don't. They just give you aerial views.
Yeah.
Of it, and they don't let you see the streets and like being overrun and like crazy. Like it doesn't look crazy from a distance. It looks
Yeah.
oddly peaceful.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's it's something that having a low budget really helped to if they had a bigger budget, yeah, they probably would have shown a lot more, but like not having that budget helped to make the location seem that much more darker or grandiose or mysterious,
Well, the location stuff is brilliant too. They shot it in East St. Louis, which after it suffered like a huge fire in I think 1976. So a lot of it was like burnt down and rough. And then like I don't know how they did the backdrops and made it look like New York, but they turned East St. Louis.
A lot
into
of
New
model
York.
work.
Yeah.
It's not too hard. I mean, like, I remember seeing. I think I might have even said it on the show one time. I remember seeing like some kind of BuzzFeed post or something like that, where they made a thing where they were like, tell the city by the street. It's like Portland, Philadelphia, New York, or which one is New York? And then no matter what you clicked, none of them were New York.
Right.
But they all looked like New York because a lot of the East Coast cities. A lot of old cities just look the fucking same. There's not really nothing you can do to get away from that.
Right. Right.
So I can see them using St. Louis and just being like, yeah, we can get away with it.
Yeah.
But they did use a shitload of model work. They built a full scale like model of the island of Manhattan for all those intro shots with the water was actually was real. So they filled the soundstage with water to make it look like the Hudson and stuff. And then the other stuff, I mean, I don't know if we want to dive into special effects right now, but this is one thing that I just think is fucking fantastic is when Snake is coming in on the glider and he's got the digital heads-up display of the city and stuff. That was just a model city that he's looking at, and all they did was they used like strips of like luminescent like tape, and they outlined the buildings, and then they just shot it with a color on those like white strips to make it look like a green digital heads-up display, and it's just. All it is an actual camera flying through a model city.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's like so fucking cool.
Yeah, no, I read that too, and I thought that was some of the coolest special. Like they did so many cool, but then again you had James Cameron working on
John
this
Carpenter.
film. No, James Cameron worked on this film.
Oh, did he?
In the special effects? Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I did. That's something I did not know.
Yeah, that's great.
Isn't that crazy? Like, yeah, one of the other biggest directors in like the sci-fi action genre, like worked on this film.
There was some things though that I will say, like down view. It had to tell the audience what it was looking at, like because it was like a 3D, like the 3D imagery and stuff like that. It's probably something we weren't used to seeing at the time, and like didn't know how to perceive it. So they're like down view, up view.
Oh, the labeling of the glider, you mean?
Oh. Yeah.
That's your big quarrel with the film?
Yeah.
They labeled things. Oh.
It just seemed a little, and I thought the intro was a little kind of weird too. Like,
Which one?
What do you mean?
like where she's explaining, like reading the text that's basically on the screen. Like, I don't know, it just felt a little.
I liked that.
I didn't mind that either. I kind of like narrators.
My only problem with that, which I have this with every film that does this, it drives me insane, is when it gives you a year and then it says now.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I just take the now out, and I'm cool with like alternative universe 1997. Like, I can play that off in my mind and accept it.
I remember when everything used to be like 20XX to like establish like it's definitely sometimes in the new millennium, but like it could be any year. We don't know. Just definitely not 2100.
I think they did that in the movie Hardware.
Oh, did they?
I think they do. They did it a lot in a lot of weird films to suggest that the new millennium is the time. Go on.
Thanks, Mike.
This movie, man, it does open up pretty cool. You get to see like I said, just being at that prison is cool. All the helicopters taking off, and then like what the fuck's going on here? They're blowing up people out of the water.
Yeah.
And then Snake shows up, and they're walking him through a corridor, and that's all really cool shot. I like that stuff too. It really establishes the prison unit. Oh man, I almost forgot the most important open shot. Let's talk about that because that's really changed now. We can't do that anymore. Can't fly a plane into New York.
Oh my gosh, right?
It definitely there's a lot of stuff in like I mean, and I know it was a joke to say, let's build a wall,
Yeah.
But like there are a lot of parts of this film where it's just like you look at it now in the context of where we are now.
Yeah.
And it's like 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 that was a reality.
Yeah. It's crazy.
And that was definitely one of them. Yeah, watching a plane fly into New York City, it was kind of like
Air Force One of all
Yeah,
planes as well.
It was such a weird. I mean, it has a definite different meaning
Now,
yeah.
which is kind of weird that a film can age like that and give you a different feeling than maybe when you have originally saw it because of actual events that
I mean,
happened.
just the amount of
It's weird.
times that they even talk about the World Trade Center being
Right.
like, where would they land the glider? Well, it's got to be on the top of the World Trade Center.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and now living in a world where that skyline doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of sad for a film that's supposed to be just good, lighthearted, like action, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, there's not supposed to be anything too heavy-handed. It's hard now not to watch this film and get that because
Yeah.
it talks about a glory time of New York that doesn't exist
Makes
anymore
me
due to that
wonder
day.
though if like John Carpenter was tapped into something. Like he kind of looked at the world around him and was like, "What's some terrible shit that could happen to us?"
This
like,
was. I think he based the script off the Watergate scandal.
Is
From
that-
what I read, like he based it. He because he wrote this in I want to say 70. I want to say 76, and then I think Nick Castle was brought in to make it more New York, and made the character Cabby. He came up. I think Nick Castle was the guy who came up with Cabby. Who actually Nick Castle played Michael Myers, if I remember correctly, in the first Halloween.
no, Tony Moran did.
He was something with Halloween. He did something with Halloween. I'm pretty sure.
Mm.
If I'm not mistaken, because it was co-written.
Co-written.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
By Nick Castle. So
I don't know. He was wrong about some stuff. New York. I mean,
no, obviously
it's hard to go to New York now and see this New York. It just doesn't fucking exist.
Right.
Like, I mean, I understand at that time it was like, listen, I feel like with him, and we see this in like films like They Live and other films where it's like he's really tapped in on the idea that like, okay, if things keep going the way they're going right now, this is inevitably going to happen. I feel like he was wrong on a lot of that stuff. I mean, New York, I don't even look at New York City as being a dangerous place anymore.
No.
It's a place you
And
could walk around in the middle of the night and nothing's going to happen.
Maybe not tapped in necessarily to New York specific, but just like to the things that are going on in our culture and like what they could lead. Like, because like, I would say They Live is like that as well. Like, it
Yeah.
kind of makes a similar type of point.
That's more of like a socioeconomic thing. This is more like a crime thing.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, at least the crime thing I feel like has not happened. I feel like, I mean, doesn't feel like this is
Hold on,
dangerous.
yeah.
the Warriors.
Going back to what Cody said. Nick Castle did play Michael Myers in the first film.
Oh, you
Yeah.
fucking lose. How is that
Yeah.
possible
Look at
that
his
Cody's
face.
right about something?
his face is upset. Chris's face is upset.
Well, I stand.
His world just came crashing
know.
down.
Who's
I
around
Tony
him.
stand-
Moran?
Yeah, who is Tony Moran? Why am I?
Is that a movie?
Yeah, is that what is that?
Who is Tony Moran?
Let me see. I'm gonna look.
He's a DJ. No, I don't know. I'll be spelling his name wrong.
Why does it say actor Halloween?
Michael Myers
Actors.
Unmasked, played by actors Nick Castle and Tony Moran.
So we're both correct.
Oh, it just killed fucking
Wow.
twists on the show.
Oh man, this is like an M. Night Shyamalan episode.
Wow, that was interesting.
yeah.
Okay.
So-
so they
Hey, learning with
both-
Cult Film and Review.
Film facts with Cody and Chris.
I like how, like, you know, like 75% of our audience is like, these guys are fucking idiots.
Oh yeah,
Who
that-
didn't know this?
I know. They
Yeah.
all think that. That's fine. That's why I'll cut all that out.
No, that's the beauty of the show is that we're not here because we know everything. We're here to have fun.
Yeah.
All right, so does anyone have like a favorite scene?
Yeah, I really like the fight with the baseball bat in the ring. I thought that was
That is fun
that was
scene.
fun
That's a
to
good
watch,
scene.
and I was
That
like,
is a good scene.
that's cool. It's like a wrestling match, but
Cody, was that some kind of wrestler that?
Yeah, he was a wrestler. I forget his name. I can't remember, but he was a wrestler.
Ox something.
Ox something. Yeah, it's Ox something. Dude, obviously that dude was huge, man.
yeah, he was gigantic.
although I did feel like the scene was cut kind of weird because like I would have just preferred to see the whole match start to finish, but they kept cutting back to like Adrian Barbeau and Brain,
Yeah.
like, and I'm like, why do they keep intercutting this shit? Like,
Because there's a story
yeah,
going
there's a
on
story
behind
yeah.
the scenes.
I know. I just feel like that it just was jarring to me. But I liked the scene a lot. Like I liked the way that it came to a finish. You know, like
Yeah.
him basically popping up behind and just thunk, and it was just done over.
Yeah.
And then
I like that
suddenly it
too.
gets interrupted, and everybody leaves and forgets about Snake Plissken.
Yeah.
And the fucking he's just like, all right, I'm out of here.
way better way to like have challenge Snake going back to Escape from L.A. I'm sorry, the free throws,
Come on, dude, that was so cool.
not sick at all.
Oh,
sick
from
at all.
Escape
So
from L.A.
cool.
Escape from L.A. Yeah.
All right, what about you, Mike? What's your favorite scene?
I easily, and only because I feel like John Carpenter in all of his films does this particularly well. It's when the crazies attack that building. He's so good at like
Making a zombie film without making a zombie film?
Like it's
I
the
know.
same thing from Assault and Precinct 13.
Yes.
It's the same thing as like Big Trouble in Little China. There's a scene where like people are jumping through windows and shit. It's like this idea of being in an enclosed place and just having fast-paced people just throwing themselves at you like waves and waves of just faceless like enemies coming at you, and they did the exact same thing in this film, and I fucking loved it.
That is my
Coming
favorite
through the
scene
fucking
too.
Floors.
The sewers. and stuff. That's my favorite scene too, dude. It is the scariest part of this
It's
movie.
intense.
And it is so intense, dude. And you're like, oh my god, he's just they're all like running
I
through
love
like
the
corridors.
chase.
Dude,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, none of these people are going to be able to keep up with Kurt Russell. He's climbing shit that is super hard to climb. There's like 6 of them hanging on,
Yeah, like
just,
monkeys,
yeah.
dude, just swinging from bars and shit.
Like it's crazy, dude. He makes zombie film. Like I wish he would have made a zombie film at some point, because his zombie films in his little zombie films in his movies
Yeah.
are like the best parts. Like it's crazy.
I'd probably say one of my favorite scenes is actually at the beginning of the movie when he first gets into New York and he goes into the movie theater.
Oh yeah,
And he makes his way downstairs into like this really. I felt like that was the first time in the movie where you really got. You got hit with 2 things like back to back. You got hit with this like ridiculousness. You're like, well, I guess a bunch of criminals need something to do, they'd probably dress up as women and put on plays and shit. But then you get down, he goes down in the basement, and it's just this really seedy, disgusting kind of underworld thing that's going on. And it's also the first time you see Snake Plissken be a badass, because 2 guys jump him and he fucking one elbow here, like a fist here, and they're fucking done. It's like, oh, this guy can fight. Like this guy's a badass. And
it's like seamless.
And then as he makes his way through, you see he sees the president's locator on the guy's wrist, and some dude just beating the shit out of his face, and it's like, oh, what the hell? Like you already find him, and it turns out to be a crazy and a future character that pops up in pretty much almost all of John Carpenter's films. That old guy. So I like that. I like that whole scene. It just had a lot of mood to it, and it really set up. It gave you more about the character Snake.
Yeah. I always wish that there was a little bit more of that kind of stuff in the film. You know what I mean? Like you get the good stuff with the crazies, and then like you get that scene, you get the crazies, and then it kind of slows down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish you would have got a little more of that, like a chase film, like that sense of urgency. And
I
stuff
agree,
like
because
that.
I feel like if there is one thing that hurts this film the most, and it's going to go into my review too, is just it does not have a capable villain. The Duke is not.
Yeah.
He's almost in the background. He's not really. He doesn't have that Die Hard feel.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, mano y mano, a guy just as badass as Snake Plissken. He kind of seems like a dude in the background, like he's running shit.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah, he's shooting a gun at the fucking president. I mean, that's his one moment to look like a real badass. I just feel like.
His henchman with the crazy hair was more of a a scary villain.
And he dies in such a
you mean
in such
Steve,
an unnatural go on.
You mean Steve Buscemi's portrayal of Rufio?
It's like if Christopher Walken fucked Steve Buscemi, they had a kid. It would have been this guy.
Who's really into the Peter Pan movie? Yeah.
Really into the
I would
new
say,
Hook.
Yeah.
And throw a little bit of what's his name from Fright Night in there.
Oh yeah, yeah, you're right.
Well, what was that character's name?
Tommy.
Evil.
Yeah, Evil, that's
Ed.
right.
Is it Evil Ed?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's Isaac Hayes. He just doesn't talk a lot, and
Yeah, like, and you know, it's funny. Like I mentioned, I think I might have mentioned this to Cody earlier before we started recording. But so I watched this movie with my girlfriend, and she'd never seen it before. And when we were done, like one of the big takeaways she had is like, who's the Duke? Why is the Duke the king of New York? Like, what is his like rise to power? What's his how did he become the Duke? Like,
He put
she didn't feel
chandeliers
like
on the front of his car.
Yeah, she felt like she didn't get enough to be like, why is this guy so strong and so feared?
It's really confusing too, because why? Okay, so that scene where he's driving in the car, why is the Duke sitting in the passenger seat and then the henchman sitting in the back? When I saw this film again, I was like, oh wait, I thought Wait, he's a Duke?
No, that's how the Duke do.
I guess.
Duke needs to be in
but
the front.
It just seems like an odd thing to do. Normally, if you're the badass, you're kind of like people drive me. You know?
No, because you get the sense that he. Another reason I say that is the end. You get the sense that he is the badass that everyone should be afraid of when he's just fucking plowing through mines and has no idea where they are in his car and like is not worried about death. He's just
but then he gets shot by the
get to him.
president in such a kind of like. There's no real battle between him and Snake.
No, I
Like,
agree with you. I feel like for as much a badass that Snake Plissken is, it would have been cool to have an equally badass villain so that they can kind of go toe to. But it makes total sense for the president to get the final shot in there and basically kill him because he's spent the whole film being tortured by this guy.
Oh, I agree. It's a cool thing to see that happen. It's just if you think
And
about
plus it's Donald Pleasance like
Yeah.
snapping into insanity for a minute or two.
yeah, you're right.
Can we talk about Donald Pleasance's reactions in this film? They are pretty corny, in
Yeah.
my opinion. They're like really overacted, I felt.
Really?
To the point where I was like, look at these faces that he's making. This is weird. Like,
I didn't feel like he had enough. That the only time where I felt like he was overacting was that last scene, but it worked for his character. Like I don't feel like he was.
See, yeah, because I think like,
Actually, I think Donald Pleasance is actually one of the best acted characters because that last scene where Snake goes, "I just want a moment of your time, so we got you out, and a lot of good people had to die. I just want to know how you felt about that." And he is so good at snapping into, "Well, yeah, I'd like to thank them for sure. Are we on the air yet? Okay." And he just kind of blows that entire question off.
I'll 100% agree with that scene, but leading up to that point, it was distracting for me to watch his like reactions to the situation.
really.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get any of that.
I like the whole cast of this movie. I have a hard time picking out like someone that I thought was.
Yeah, I think the one that's the weakest is Isaac Hayes.
And he's not an
Yeah.
actor. That's
But
probably why.
I wanted to say that too. I mean, he's the only guy that isn't really an actor.
Yeah.
What's his name? Who plays?
Brain?
Who plays Hawk?
Oh, Lee Van Cleef, motherfucker.
Lee Van Cleef is fucking phenomenal in this film, man.
Oh, you should explore more of his films then.
Like I am.
He's a spaghetti western fucking hero of those.
He's great.
He's fucking fantastic.
Ernest Borgnine is great.
Ernest Borgnine was awesome.
He's always great.
Adrian Barbeau.
Yep.
Barboobs.
She's great in it too, dude. Okay, let me tell you something. There's one thing about this movie that I fucking absolutely 100% love. That puts it up there for me too. Is she does not fall for Snake.
No, she's it's
And
very.
I love it that there's really no love interest in this movie for him because he's got a fucking mission to do. And he ain't got time for that.
Well, if you count Chock full of nuts, girl.
But that's funny. I actually thought that was hilarious how that turned out because it makes you think, oh, this is going to be like a sidekick girl, like somebody he falls for. And then she just gets like ripped away from him and he has to like defend
he just
himself.
books it.
Yeah.
He's like, all right, that sucks for you. I'm out.
No,
Oh,
she's
yeah.
great, and I like that. So as I understand it from the backstory of the film, the Duke gives her to Harry Dean Stanton to Brain as some sort of gift, and yet in a weird way, she really does come to love him in real life to the point where she she die in such an awesome way. That scene is fucking. I was like,
great.
whoa, like. It's a great scene. The fact that she's I'm gonna stay here. I'm gonna fucking
I'm gonna
end this, and then she just gets hit by that car.
Yeah.
rough hit. Like
yeah, that's a fast hit.
Yeah.
That was a fast hit.
Why are we talking? I have a deal for you. You receive full pardon for every criminal action you've committed in the United States. It was an accident. About an hour ago, a small jet went down inside New York City. The president was on board.
President of what?
That's not funny, Pliskin.
All right, guys, we're back. We're talking about Escape from New York. John Carpenter directed this, JC. And fitting on Easter. I wanted to get into some dislikes. And if I have one dislike that just bothers me throughout the whole film, like Snake Plissken, yes, is an iconic character, but it's really just a Kurt Russell impression of Clint Eastwood that oh man, it bugs the hell out of me. I don't know why. He just did his best impression of Clint Eastwood, who I think they wanted for this film at some point. I know Charles Bronson was mentioned for this film.
Mm.
Clint Eastwood was mentioned for this film. There's another actor too who was mentioned for this film.
Is that like maybe like a theme of his? Kurt Russell?
Just
He goes into films and he's like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna do a John Wayne impression throughout the entire film where I fight kung fu wielding bad guys and ancient evil minions. I know that. I mean, that's what he did. Like,
Yeah, he might.
Big
He
Trouble in
might.
Little China. It's just a John Wayne impression.
Might draw inspiration. Well, him and Carpenter are pretty close, so I'd imagine Carpenter has some influence over what
I
impression
don't know.
he does.
I don't know if I would. I don't know if I would say. I don't know if I'd say Jack Burton is a. Definitely Snake Plissken is definitely
Clint
no,
Eastwood.
he's de-
pulled
like,
from Clint
like he
Eastwood,
said
but
it-
Jack Burton, I don't get much Clint Eastwood from him.
No, John Wayne.
No,
he
John
said.
Wayne.
Oh, from John Wayne.
Yeah,
I would say yeah.
I could see that. Yeah,
like he said it in interviews.
yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
Kurt Russell, he pulls from good sources.
The greats.
Yeah,
He does, but I mean, it just kind of bothers me a little bit in
Yeah,
this movie.
I
Like,
mean, it adds to his the mystery about him and stuff for sure. But I mean, I get where you're coming from too. It's just kind of, I'm gonna talk like this.
the whole movie, and
Is there like a
Yeah.
kind of, maybe there's not, and I just made it up in my head, but like, is there like a thing like with like Snake Plissken being kind of a small guy? Like, because he's not really like that jacked or ripped. He's not like, he doesn't look like he's that athletic.
He's a trained
what do you
fighter,
mean he
man.
doesn't look like he's that athletic? He was in
didn't-
good shape.
He really
Yeah.
didn't look like
He
that.
didn't have dad bod. he wasn't running around in dad bod.
I just
like,
I don't know. I imagine somebody a little bit more, but which I liked that he didn't come off as like too big to me. But then when they put him next to what's his fucking name in the ring,
Well, that guy's like
yeah, that dude's like 7
the
foot
largest
tall.
man. Yeah.
I know, but that was just kind of, I don't know.
Anybody.
That kind of made me chuckle a little bit. I was
The-
like, oh, Kurt Russell.
Yeah,
looks
but you
kinda
know what?
Small.
He still whooped his ass.
What's
Yeah,
with
he did.
Size doesn't matter, man.
What's with Kurt Russell and boots?
What do you mean?
What do you mean?
Like the boots in this film are mentioned. Like the boots, you can't help but look at the boots in Big Trouble in Little China.
I love those boots. They
It's
got
just-
a hidden knife pocket.
like it's just boots, man. I don't know.
He's all about the boots.
It's all about the boots. I feel like he builds his character from the ground up. First thing we got to do is
Yep.
start with a nice boot.
Yeah.
When you're an urban warrior, you got to wear boots.
It's a necessity in urban warfare. So you need a good boot.
I would say if I had something, if I had something to gripe about this film, it's just that I wish I got a little bit more, like a little bit more fast paced, adventure from it. Like, because I think Mike mentioned it, or when you guys mentioned it earlier, it's true. Like the movie definitely, like when he meets Brain, the movie definitely takes a lull. It slows down, and it kind of the pacing gets a little rough.
It doesn't.
And-
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's like that sense of urgency disappears when you meet Brain.
Yeah, for that scene, it basically that sense of urgency is gone until till Snake gets in the ring with that big ass dude and fights him, and then from that point forward, that energy and that action, that pace picks up again. But there's definitely just a slight lull in them, which I mean, that's me like I'm like stretching here because even that stuff it doesn't bother me because I feel like there's enough interesting stuff that is happening that. But I just wish there was a little bit more like Snake Plissken action going through the burned out New York City a little bit more.
I agree. I think that if there was it's weird. I want to see Snake Plissken be a little bit more of a badass, and then like it was brought up before, like the Duke is just not a good enough villain. Like that's another problem I have is like when your hero is the coolest guy. Like you got to have a pretty extravagant villain, and you didn't. I mean, you got chandeliers on a car. Like it's not.
And he had
Extrav-
bags.
Yeah.
He had bags in his car.
Like
so
I
he
feel
could-
like the what's his name in the Warriors was even more,
Yeah.
had more character
I
to
agree,
him.
yeah.
So it's like, yeah, but I do agree. Like I feel like my biggest complaint with this film is the pacing. Like I even feel like it took a little while to get going. Like
Yeah, in the
before he
beginning.
actually gets to New York. And I noticed there's just not a lot of dialogue in this movie. Like really, there isn't. There is in certain parts, but there's a lot of 5-minute sequences where he's just kind of wandering through the city and like not really.
See, but I think that's
No, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying it took a little bit to get into it, and then when it did, it was like fuck yeah, and then it kind of slowed down, and then of course at the end picks up again. So
it's a roller coaster.
I guess so. Yeah, stayed on that downslope a
But
little too
I
long.
mean, I think I kind of I think Mike was going to disagree with you on the lack of dialogue.
Yeah, I think it's part of his.
And it's part of the character.
Yeah.
It's part of the what makes him him. Because
He
you look
talks
at
softly and carries a big stick. I mean,
yes,
that's
and
like,
that's like
his whole thing.
any like good anti-hero. And if he is pulling from Clint Eastwood, then all you have to do is go watch Fistful of Dollars. And Clint Eastwood has how many lines of dialogue? And they're 4 words at max. Like they're few and far between. But when what he says is impactful. He doesn't speak just to speak. He only speaks if he has something to say.
Right.
Which makes it, I think, makes a really cool character.
It's almost like painful for him to speak. He has to really use it when it's important.
painful for him to speak.
No, and that's fine. But even just as a film, not just Pliskin's character, I felt like it just kind of took you on a journey without a lot of exposition.
Yeah.
I want to talk about one more other thing about Snake Plissken as a character, and it's something that I really like about him. Although they don't really dive into it so much as, say, a film like Indiana Jones does. I get the impression that Snake Plissken, when he goes home, doesn't see himself as a badass. That he knows that, I've gotten through a lot.
Yeah, it's
through
a
sheer luck.
true anti-hero. He's
right, but his reputation precedes him to every room that he goes into because, it's... what I like, there's that scene where he goes up against a what is it? I think it's does he have like a what is it called? A spear gun or some shit like
I don't know.
that?
Every gun has a scope on it.
it's
though,
like
in
a
this
crossbow.
movie.
Yeah, it's like a crossbow. That's what I meant. Yeah, where he gets shot in the leg or something.
Yeah.
And it kind of shows him as a really vulnerable character.
Mm-hmm.
He's not. It opens up with him beating the crap out of those guys with one punch.
Yeah.
But then it also shows that he'll he's probably been shot a few times.
Yeah.
And you know what? An inch here, an inch there, it would have been the end of Snake. Yeah. Then everybody would be like, yeah, Snake Plissken died.
Yeah.
I do feel like he is the type of character that everybody says, oh my God, he's such a badass. When he walks back, he's like, I can't believe I got out of that alive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, I definitely agree with that. One of the things too, before we get into our ratings, that I wanted to talk about because I thought it was great, and it's another carpenterism that we were talking about, where he doesn't give you too much detail, is the end of the film, where Snake's just walking away and ripping up the tape.
Yeah.
And you're like, what was on there? What was so important?
Yeah.
And you don't ever get to know, which I think is really cool.
They
Because
hint
you
to
can.
No,
it.
they did play it. There was a
Played it for
moment where
2
they played
seconds.
it.
Yeah.
It definitely has. No, wait. Isn't the whole idea about they were talking about the cold fusion thing?
There's something about that. I imagine it had something to do with
Unlimited energy.
some kind of energy.
That's what normally
energy thing.
cold
yeah.
fusion is normally
But
generally.
no, I loved it too. And what I loved the most about that scene is Snake gave the president an opportunity to prove that he was worth it, or prove that he cared. Because I feel like if the president gave a different answer, he would have been like, here's the actual tape.
Right.
He's like, you might need this. And since the president gave him some bullshit answer like, fuck the people who had to die to get me out, I was more important, which I'm sure harkens back to Snake Plissken being in the military and just kind of that kind of understanding of you lose good men and it seems like nobody gives a shit type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So he's just kind of like, all right, cool. Lights another cigarette, walks away, and just starts ripping up the tape like, fuck you.
Yeah, I love
Fuck the
that.
rest of the world, you know?
No, and I also like it too because it made me go okay, what is the where does it go from here? Because obviously they're gonna come after him for the fucking ripping up this tape or having this tape. This tape was that important,
Yeah.
and then it just goes to
It
credits.
was so funny. You're talking about Donald Pleasant's reactions. I feel like that reaction was the funniest because it's just kind of cold. It just starts playing fucking big band jazz music, and he's just staring fuck. That made me laugh. But yeah, I think I agree with you. I want to know where it goes next, and
Yeah. All right, let's rate this Mammer Jammer. Kyle, what are we rating it?
Oh, we're gonna rate it Cobra tattoos.
Cobra tattoos. How many are you getting put on your body? Let's find out. Let's start with. Oh, you know what? I'll go first. I'll give everybody a little breather here. I'm gonna give this. Man, it's tough for me. I part of me wants to give it a 5, but I don't know. With the Snake Plissken and the pacing, and just being the Clint Eastwood ripoff, I just want something more. Those are my 2 biggest gripes about this film. I'll give it a 4. Solid 4 though. Everything else I love about this film, from just the creative filmmaking to creating your own hero to the story itself and how fun that is. Look, even the movies that rip this movie off are great.
Mhm.
Like Lockout is a great movie, and it's this movie in space.
Yeah,
Like I think they even got sued or something for it. Like
I think they did.
yeah. So I mean, that tells you how good of a film this is. Like even when the ripoffs are good, like you know you got a good movie. But solid 4 for me. Watch it if you haven't seen it. If you haven't seen it, what the hell's wrong with you?
What's wrong with you?
Great John Carpenter movie. Just one of those ones that's highly influential, and Kurt Russell, still love him, even though it's not my favorite character of his. Mike?
I'm gonna give this film a 4 for snake tattoos. And it really boils down to the villain. Like I just
Yeah.
that's the one like real weak part about this. It's just like okay, I mean, there's not a big level of conflict in it. I mean, it's the biggest villain in fucking Snake Plissken's life in this film is just that clock. That's it. Like it's watching the times tick down. Like everything else is just incidental. And the Duke, if the Duke was somebody that was a little bit more, I guess badass for lack of a better word, I think it would have been better. I feel like you need that when you have a character like Snake Plissken. You know, like I said, going back, that's what makes Die Hard so good.
Yeah.
All the good Die Hards because the villain's good.
Yeah.
If you take away the villain, it's just John McClane going through some shit, I guess. You know?
Yeah, because I feel like if you have a good villain, then there's actual stakes at risk.
Huge stakes.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. There were no stakes in this. There was no situation where Snake was fighting for somebody he cared about, where like people were threatening him with anything other than we might kill you. But Snake goes through life pretty much like, well, I mean, I could die tomorrow. I guess, you know, that's the one thing. But other than that, man, just like it's shot well. It's an iconic character.
Mhm.
You know, I think it's one of Carpenter's best films, even in execution.
Definitely.
But not as good as Big Trouble in Little China. Still my number 1 right now, I think. Well, the thing, but yeah,
We haven't got to that yet.
We haven't got
We haven't
to
got
that
to
yet.
that.
Don't
Yeah.
worry, it's coming.
yeah.
Chris?
Yeah, I'm gonna give this a 4 also. I just have just those couple of gripes, the pacing and Donald Pleasance's unnatural facial features
Donald
and
Pleasance's
reactions.
unpleasances.
Yeah. But yeah, it was fun to revisit it. It's it kind of reminded me of The Warriors, too, which I like. Kind of blended these cool ideas. Interesting how how poignant some of John Carpenter's writing can be. And I just I would recommend this film. It's a classic. I mean, Snake Plissken is a classic, iconic character that will probably live on, in film history, not just cult film history, but film history. And this film just proves that John Carpenter is a master at what he does to write, direct, pretty much produce, score, like everything, and always do a solid job. The fact that you can tell you're watching a John Carpenter film when it first comes on, it's like he's just a master at what he does, and this is definitely one of the more important films I think that he's put out there.
Kyle?
So I'm gonna give this movie. First of all, I'm gonna give it 4 Cobra tattoos. The movie does the only thing that I called out, it does suffer from, I think, a little bit of a pacing issue. And going to Mike's point, I think the villain, the Duke, leaves a little bit to be desired for sure. The film is executed wonderfully. It is shot, written, scored. It's John Carpenter all over. It's his trademark tone, mood, everything, and I love it for that. I'm going to give it an extra 1 point for childhood nostalgia because I fucking love this movie. I've loved it since the first time I've seen it, and though there are things that I can call out and say, meh, they're forgivables because the character and the film has definitely had like an impact on my life in some way. So it's definitely getting that extra bump to get to the full 5 rating, 5 Cobras. And, I'm excited to see because, it just was recently announced Robert Rodriguez will be remaking this film. So I'm excited to see what happens with him. And if you
Are you?
I am, because you know what? Of all the other remakes, John Carpenter's this is how I'm excited. So 2 things came out in the last few months, which is John Carpenter endorsed a Halloween remake, and he's endorsed an Escape from New York remake. He has never endorsed any remake ever. All he said is, I put my hand out, and they put a check in it, and that's it. So the fact that he's endorsing it makes me excited. And if you want to know how into Snake Plissken I am, you can just look at the Cult Film Review poster, and of course I'm dressed up as Snake Plissken in that, which I think says a lot about my love for the film and the history of it. So yeah, it's getting 5 Cobra tattoos for me.
Let me ask you this though. I just got to follow up on something though. Are you excited with Robert Rodriguez at the helm of a remake?
I mean,
Yeah,
why?
I feel safe about it.
I don't.
Why wouldn't you be?
I don't.
Name
I
a
don't
film.
feel-
Name a film that you don't like of his.
What's he done recently? The damn what was the
Not
the
including
third,
the Spy Kids movie.
No, the third Desperado
Machete?
movie. And Machetes I'm not a fan
Wait.
of either.
Once Upon a Time in Mexico is a good
That's
film.
a solid
I'm
fucking
not a-
movie.
Not a fan of that movie.
I'll be honest with you. I liked Machete 2 more than I liked Machete 1.
Yeah, those are the only
Actually.
2 actually of his I haven't seen yet. I haven't watched either of the Machete movies.
I thought the first Machete movie, I was like, eh.
But I
But
think
the
it-
second one, I remember walking out of that theater and being like, oh, bad.
I think his Grindhouse entry, Planet Terror, was pretty solid.
Yeah,
that was solid,
I believe.
yeah.
I believe if you look at the character of El Mariachi, there are tons of cues of Snake Plissken that he's pulled and brought into it, and he's a notable fanboy of it. So I'm just excited that there is a director who has worked in low-budget action adventure films, who has
A passion.
a passion for the character and wanting to do it right. So yeah, I'm going to give him a chance.
Who would you want to play
Yeah, I was just thinking
Snake
that.
Plissken?
Okay,
No,
wow.
Kurt Russell. I want old Snake.
I-
I'd rather have old Snake versus a
I
new Snake.
don't see why they can't.
I would do Old Man Snake.
Yeah.
I would do
No,
like
I
Old
mean,
Man
why not?
Logan.
He
Like
doesn't
old
look
man.
that much different.
He
honestly.
doesn't.
Like,
He's still doing shit.
Yeah, he just was in the new Fast and Furious
Yeah,
movie.
like, I mean,
Yeah, I would totally take Old Man Snake over New Snake. But I don't know. That's something that, Rodriguez is really going to have to. That's going to be the biggest challenge, I think, of doing this, because I don't feel like there's any obvious choice out there.
Shia LaBeouf.
Oh,
God.
I would just quit
We've tried
film. I would
him.
quit film altogether if that happened. Be like, you know what? What's
There
the
is no
point?
God.
What's the point?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be tough. I think it'd probably be what's his name? From Thor.
Chris Hemsworth?
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? If I had to pick anyone, I'll take this back. If I had to pick anyone, it would be why can't I remember his name? God,
Chris Hemsworth.
no, the who played Max.
You mean Mad Max?
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh yeah, that's a great choice.
not Sam Worthington. What's
no,
his name?
the,
God damn
the
it.
fucking British dude. Who
played-
played Bane.
I can't
Tom
believe
Hardy.
this. Tom
Yes,
Hardy, thank
Tom
you.
Yes,
Hardy,
Tom
great
Hardy
choice.
would probably be the only person that I'd be
Wow, that's a good choice.
I'd be cool with.
He could
I like
do it.
that.
He could
that's
do
a
it.
good. That's a really
I
good
gritty.
mean,
choice.
I feel like he proved himself with Mad Max Fury Road of being that character that says nothing but says a lot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great choice. Thanks for joining us for our 100th episode. I will speak for all of us when I say we really, really appreciate you guys listening. It's surreal to us that people listen to us talk about movies because we do this when no one's listening anyways.
Yeah.
And I will just say, please leave us a review on iTunes. Rate us 5 stars. It helps us out so much just to get noticed. We've been doing this for 2 goddamn years.
So I'm angry about it.
And no one's noticed. No, I'm just kidding. You guys have all noticed, and we, like I said before, really appreciate that. But just please leave us a review. You can follow us on social media at cultfilm_review on Instagram and Twitter. You can also follow us on Facebook. You can follow Kyle at...
Ooh, you can follow me on Instagram at cultfilm_Kyle.
You can follow Chris at...
Oh, that was so bad.
I loved mine.
I'm the one that loves it the most, and you give me the wimpiest one.
Damn right.
Cult Film Chris Cult Film _ Chris on Instagram.
100 episodes. Chris is still a professional. You can follow Mike at...
You can follow me at Mike Solucio on Twitter.
And you can follow me at VHS Collect on Instagram. That's our show for this week, guys. Remember, if you're going to join a cult, make sure they watch good movies. See you next week.